A letter from Consort Gyokyo?
Yes, I was told to deliver it personally.
I'm afraid Lady Aduo is attending tea right now. Feng Ming, Aduo's pudgy chief lady-in-waiting, regarded Mao Mao apologetically. Mao Mao opened the small wooden box she was carrying. Normally, it might have contained a slip of paper, but this one held a small jar with a single red trumpet of a flower within. A familiar, sweet aroma drifted from it. Mao Mao saw Feng Ming wince. She must have recognized the blossom.
So I was right?
Mao Mao slid the jar aside, revealing a scrap of paper on which was written a list of specific words she suspected Feng Ming knew perfectly well.
I would like to speak to you if I may, Lady Feng Ming,
Mao Mao said. Very well, Feng Ming replied.
I like the sharp ones,
Mao Mao thought.
Makes things so much quicker.
Feng Ming, her face taut, ushered Mao Mao into the garnet pavilion. Feng Ming's personal chambers were laid out on much the same plan as Hong Yong's, but everything she owned was crammed into one corner. It seemed she was all packed.
Yep, that's Hallie's.
Mao Mao and Feng Ming sat facing each other across a round table. Feng Ming served warming ginger tea, and a caddy on the table contained hard buns of bread. Fruit honeys were slathered all over them. Now, whatever is the matter? Feng Ming asked. We're quite finished cleaning, if that's what you're here for. Her voice was gentle, but it had a searching quality. She knew why Mao Mao had come, but she wasn't going to be the one to start the conversation.
When will you be moving, if I may ask?
Mao Mao said, indicating the belongings in the corner. You're very perceptive. Feng Ming's voice immediately turned cold. The spring cleaning had only been a pretext. In order that the new consort might be in place by the time people made their formal New Year's greetings, Aduo was going to have to leave the Garnet Pavilion. Consorts who would not or could not bear children had no place in the rear palace, not even if they had been the emperor's companion for many years. All the more so if they lacked any powerful backer at court to secure their status, as Aduo did. To this point, the fact that Aduo was the monarch's milk sibling, a bond closer than that with one's own biological parents, had protected her. Perhaps if at least the prince she'd borne had lived, she might have been able to hold her head up.
I have a guess about her.
Consort Aduo had the handsome beauty of a young man. There was hardly a hint of womanliness about her. If a woman could become a eunuch, she might look something like Aduo. Mao Mao hated to say anything based on an assumption, but when it was an obvious fact, sometimes that was all you could do.
Consort Aduo is no longer able to bear children, is she?
Feng Ming said nothing, but her silence was as good a confirmation. Her face grew harder and harder.
Something happened during the delivery, didn't it?
Mao Mao prodded. That has nothing to do with you. The middle-aged lady-in-waiting narrowed her eyes. They held no hint of the tender, considerate woman Mao Mao had met before, but burned with a deep hostility.
In fact, it does, for the attending physician at the birth was my adoptive father.
Mao Mao delivered this fact dispassionately. Feng Ming got to her feet. The medical staff at the rear palace was continually short-handed, so much so that even the quack who filled the position at the moment could hold on to his job. The reason was simple. A man who possessed that unique skill, well-developed medical knowledge, had no need to become a eunuch. It had probably been easy enough to foist the job on her socially inept old man.
Consort Aduo's misfortune was that the birth of her child coincided with that of the imperial younger brother. Weigh the two in the scales of this court, and your lady's delivery was clearly deemed the less important.
The baby survived the difficult delivery, but Aduo lost her womb. Then the child died young. Some speculated that Aduo's infant had been lost to the same toxic makeup that had killed Consort Lihua's prince, but Mao Mao thought differently. The mother of a young prince, like Aduo, would never have been allowed the deadly face powder on her father's watch.
Do you feel at all responsible for what happened, Lady Feng Ming? When Consort Aduo was indisposed after the birth, I believe it was you who cared for the infant in her place.
Well, Feng Ming said slowly, you've got it all figured out, haven't you? Even though you're the daughter of that worthless quack who couldn't help Lady Aduo.
Yes, even so.
Blame in medicine couldn't be dismissed with a helpless shrug. Something else her father had said. He would have readily accepted abuse like quack.
You know that quack prevented your mistress from using face powder with white lead in it, and you were too smart to have given the child something so deadly.
Mao Mao opened the small jar in the letter case. Honey glistened inside. Mao Mao put the red flower from the jar into her mouth. It carried the sweetness of the honey. She plucked off the blossom, playing with it in her fingers.
There are many varieties of poisonous plants. Wolfsbane and azalea, for example. And the toxins carry over to honey made from them as well.
I'm aware of that.
I should think so.
A family of beekeepers could certainly be expected to understand such things, and if a toxin would cause such serious poisoning in an adult, think what it would do to a child.
But you didn't realize that honey could contain poison that only affected children.
It wasn't an assumption. It was fact. It was rare, but some such toxins existed. Agents that were only poisonous to children with their lower levels of resistance.
You tasted it and were fine, so you assumed he would be too. Yet the stuff you gave to the boy to help him grow was doing exactly the opposite, and you never knew it.
And then Aduo's child had perished. Cause of death? Unknown. Luomin, Mau Mau's father and the chief physician at the time, was blamed for this tremendous failure, in addition to the trouble during the birth. For these he was banished, and he was further punished with mutilation. They removed the bones of one knee.
The last thing you wanted was for your mistress to find out, for Consort Aduo to know.
To discover that Feng Ming was the reason the one child her mistress would ever have was dead.
So you tried to get Consort Lishu out of the picture.
During the reign of the prior emperor, Lishu had apparently been quite close to Aduo, and Aduo, it was said, had seemingly taken a great liking to her. Was it possible Aduo had been staying close to the young bride in hopes that the emperor would not consummate their relationship? A child separated from her parents, and a grown woman who could never give birth. A sort of symbiosis emerged between them. But one day, abruptly, Consort Aduo ceased admitting Lishu. The young consort came repeatedly to visit her, but each time, Feng Ming chased her away. Then the former emperor died, and Consort Lishu took vows.
Consort Lishu told you, didn't she, that the honey could be poisonous?
And if Lishu had continued her frequent visits, she might have eventually let the fact slip to Aduo. Aduo was clever enough that it might be all she needed to put the pieces together. That Feng Ming was desperate to avoid. After the emperor's death, however, with Lishu safely in a nunnery, Feng Ming had thought she would never see the girl again, until she reappeared at the rear palace, still a high consort, and now a threat to Aduo. Yet the girl almost seemed to make a show of coming to visit Aduo, like a child eager for her mother. So sheltered Lishu was, so blind to the world around her. So Feng Ming decided to get rid of her. Across from Mau Mau there was no trace of the calm, caring chief lady-in-waiting. Feng Ming's gaze was as cold as ice. What do you want?
Nothing,
Mau Mau said, although she felt a tingling on the back of her neck. The knife they had used to cut the buns earlier was on the shelf behind her. It was only a simple cleaver, but it was more than enough to threaten the petite Mau Mau. It was easily within Feng Ming's reach. Anything at all? Feng Ming ventured, almost sweetly.
You know perfectly well, milady, that such an offer is meaningless.
Feng Ming's lips curved vacantly at that. It didn't even rise to the level of a polite smile, but there was something deep within the expression. What? Say, do you know what matters most to the person who matters most to you? Feng Ming said to Mau Mau, the whisper of a smile still on her face. Mau Mau shook her head. She was ignorant of what was most important, be it things or people. Well, I took it away, Feng Ming said. Stole the child she cherished more than a jewel. From the moment Feng Ming had entered Aduo's service, she had known she would serve no one else in her life. The consort had a firmness of will uncommon in a woman and could bring to bear the same look as the heir himself when she spoke, and Feng Ming respected her to no end. The consort struck Feng Ming, who had spent her whole life doing just as her parents told her, like a thunderbolt. She smiled as she told the story. Lady Aduo said something to me, back then. She said her son had only followed the will of heaven, that it wasn't something for us to be disturbed over. It was impossible to know if a child would survive to the age of 7. The slightest illness could kill them seemingly on the spot. And yet, I could hear Lady Aduo crying every night. Feng Ming looked slowly at the ground. A sort of moan escaped her. The immovable chief lady-in-waiting was gone. In her place, there was only a woman racked with regret. How must she have felt as she served Consort Aduo these 16 years, devoting herself entirely to her lady, with no thought of a spouse or partner? Mau Mau could not imagine. Not Feng Ming's emotions, not what it would feel like to cherish another person to that degree. Thus, she truly didn't know what it was she wanted. Would Feng Ming accept what Mau Mau was about to propose? No doubt Jinshi had been informed of Mau Mau's recent interest in the archives. She didn't think she could hide anything from the eunuch, who all but ran the rear palace. She had managed to keep the truth to herself in the matter of Princess Fuyo, but she didn't think she could throw him off the trail this time. Nor did she want to. When he heard what Mau Mau had to say, Jinshi would have Feng Ming arrested. She would certainly not escape the ultimate punishment, no matter what else happened or who appealed on her behalf. The truth would come to light after 16 years. Things had been set in motion, and even if Mau Mau were to vanish here and now, sooner or later, Feng Ming would be found out. The chief lady-in-waiting was too smart not to realize that. There was only one thing Mau Mau could do for her. Feng Ming couldn't hope for a reduction in her punishment, nor for the intercession of Consort Aduo. But her two motives could be reduced to one. She could continue to hide her motivation from Consort Aduo. Mau Mau knew what a terrible thing she was saying, that it amounted to asking another woman to die. But it was the only thing she could think of, the only thing a young woman with no particular influence or authority could offer.
The outcome will be the same, but if you can accept that...
If Feng Ming could accept that, she would do as Mau Mau urged her.
So tired.
Mau Mau returned to her chamber at the Jade Pavilion and collapsed onto her hard bed. Her clothes were soaked with sweat that had poured off of her the moment of highest tension, reeking of fear. She wanted a bath. Thinking she could at least change, she pulled off her outer garments, revealing a large cloth wrapped from her chest all the way down to her stomach. It held several layers of oil paper in place.
Glad I didn't need it, she said to herself. Getting stabbed still would have hurt.
Mau Mau stripped off the oil paper and found herself a fresh outfit. Jinshi could only contemplate the fact in amazement. Who would have imagined that the attempted poisoning of Consort Lishu would end with a culprit's suicide? Jinshi was in the sitting area of the Jade Pavilion, describing this outcome to the reticent lady-in-waiting. He had already informed Consort Gyokyo. And so, Feng Ming is dead. By her own hand, he said.
How lucky for all of us,
the lady-in-waiting replied with no special show of emotion. Jinshi rested his elbows on the table. Gaoshun looked like he wanted to object, but Jinshi ignored him. Manners be damned. Are you sure you don't know anything about this? He said. He sometimes had an inescapable feeling that this young lady was up to something.
I can tell you what I don't know. What you're talking about.
I'm given to understand you kept Gaoshun quite busy gathering books.
Yes, all for nothing, I'm afraid.
She sounded so nonchalant, he almost thought she was making fun of him. Then again, what else was new? It was possible she was carrying a bit of a grudge from his joke the other day. He had gone a bit overboard. But for the most part, this seemed normal. She was giving him her standard, looking at filth glare. It went beyond rudeness to achieve a purity all its own. The motive, as you guessed, was to help Consort Aduo retain her seat among the four ladies.
Is that so?
Mau Mau looked at him with total disinterest. I'm sorry to have to tell you that Consort Aduo will indeed be demoted from her place as a high consort. She's to leave the rear palace and live at the south palace.
Retribution for the attempted poisoning?
Mau Mau asked. The cat had finally started to take an interest in the ball of string. No, the move was already settled. His Majesty's decision. The Emperor's long affection for Aduo must have been what allowed her to remain in an imperial residence, rather than being sent back to her home and family. Mau Mau's uncharacteristic show of interest promptly led Jinshi to get carried away. He stood and took a step forward, whereupon she tensed and took a half step back. So he was right. She hadn't quite gotten over his little japes. Naturally, Gaoshun watched them both with exasperation. It would do Jinshi no good if Mau Mau got too tense. He sat back down. The petite serving woman bowed her head and made to leave the room, but then she stopped. A branch of red, trumpet-shaped flowers decorated the room. Hongyang put them there earlier, Jinshi informed her.
Indeed,
Mau Mau said.
What a great burst of blooms.
She took one of the blossoms, broke off the stem, and put it in her mouth. Jinshi, perplexed, approached slowly and did the same. It's sweet.
Yes, and poisonous.
Jinshi spat out the stem and covered his mouth as Gaoshun rushed to get water.
Don't worry, Mau Mau said. It won't kill you.
Then the strange girl licked her lips, which carried the hint of a sweet smile of her own.